Hello everyone, I'm Renae Kerrigan, Planetarian Director at the Peoria Riverfront Museum, and we're back with another What's Up video celebrating the 50th anniversary of Apollo 13. This video explores Flight Day 4, that the astronauts circled around the moon and also fixed a problem with their carbon dioxide levels in the lunar module. The explosion took place on Flight Day 3, so if you haven't seen that video, go back and catch up before you watch this one. So the main task of Flight Day 4 was for the astronauts to slingshot around the moon, use the moon's gravity to pick up a little bit of speed and get them on the way back to Earth. They did not fall into lunar orbit on Apollo 13. All the other missions that made it to the moon went into lunar orbit. So because they were a little bit farther away on Apollo 13, these three astronauts have traveled the farthest away from Earth any human ever has. The crew still retains that record. One of the impressive things that they did on Apollo 13, despite all of the danger that the crew was in and everything NASA had to figure out, they still took time to use the Saturn V's third stage rocket to impact the moon, which allowed them to test seismometers that had been left on the moon by Apollo 12. It's really impressive, the dedication to science that NASA still went through with this part of the mission, even in crisis mode. As the crew was slingshotting around the moon, NASA decided that they needed to fire the Lunar Modules descent engine to correct their course. This was something that the Lunar Modules engine wasn't really designed to do. Of course, it was designed to land the astronauts on the moon, and it had only been tested one time before on Apollo 9 in Earth orbit. However, if they hadn't corrected their course, they would have landed in the Indian Ocean, thousands of miles away from their intended landing site, and NASA was worried that the batteries of the LEM might not last long enough to get the crew home again safely. So they worked on figuring out how to fire that engine. There were some challenges. The Aquarius, the Lunar Modules computer, wasn't configured for this burn. Normally, the crew would have used star sightings, the locations of stars out their window, to orient the computer to exactly where the spacecraft was in space. But there was so much debris from the explosion outside the window, sort of around the spacecraft, they couldn't get a good read on the stars. They had to use the sight of the moon and the sight of the sun out of two windows to tell the computer on Aquarius where they were. They were able to do that burn using the Lunar Modules descent engine and correct their course, getting them on a quicker path home towards Earth. Towards the end of Flight Day 4, an additional problem was discovered. There was mounting levels of carbon dioxide in the lunar module. Remember, the lunar module was designed for a crew of 2 to last for about a day and a half. But now it had a crew of 3 on board, and they needed to stay healthy for about 4 to 5 days. So there was these scrubbers, CO2 scrubbers, in both the command module and the lunar module that removed CO2 from the closed environment. However, the two pieces of this Apollo spacecraft were made by different companies, and the scrubbers were a different shape. The lunar module scrubbers were cylinders, the command modules were squares. The command module scrubbers, there was plenty of them. They were extra at this point, but of course they didn't fit into the holes of the lunar module. So NASA had to figure out how to get a square peg into a round hole. Mission control, using only supplies the astronauts had on board, figured out how to basically wrap it and create a solution for the astronauts. They radioed that back up to the astronauts, and using all sorts of clever supplies, of course duct tape, some cue cards, some hoses from their spacesuits, and even a tube sock, they made a solution and were able to get the carbon dioxide levels start to fall again by the end of Flight Day 4. The exhausted crew finally was able to get a little bit of sleep. At this point, they had been awake for about 48 hours as they closed out the end of this day. We'll be back with another update from the Apollo 13 mission, describing how the mission ends soon. Please let us know what you think of these videos, or let us know any questions you might have in the comments below. We'd also love to hear your memory. Do you remember hearing about this disaster in space and worrying about the astronauts if they would be able to make it home safely? Maybe you remember watching Walter Cronkite take you through what was happening with the astronauts on board. Share your story. We'd love to hear it. And thank you to museum members and Visionary Society members who make programming like this possible. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.